Hi there, this is Calico Cat. In today's video, I'll be analyzing my training game played in correspondence against my FIDE Master coach. I have prepared some quizzes throughout the analysis, so feel free to pause the video whenever you like and tell me how much you figure them out. But before we dive into the game, I want to share some of my opening ideas. I've actually found a novelty in the Vienna. The Vienna opening starts with e4, e5, knight c3, and black usually plays knight f6. I used to enjoy playing f4, the 19th century idea, but d5 is a well-known response. So, bishop c4, controlling the d5 square, is the main line. Since white is not putting immediate pressure on the e5 pawn here, black can choose a variety of setups. One critical line continues with knight c6, d3, bishop c5, and the original idea is of course to push f4. But it's still risky due to the exposed king. For example, castle is a great move, and white plays knight f3, but knight g4 is already a bit uncomfortable. There's a trick here. White can play knight g5, and if knight f2, queen h5 is winning for white. But d5 is simply strong. Black takes the initiative, and suddenly white becomes the one fighting for equality. Because of this, I've thrown away early f4 ideas. Instead, I've been looking into h3. This subtle pawn move has been played by creative grandmasters like Richard Rapport and Levon Aronian. And the idea behind this move is to prevent knight g4 before developing the knight to e2. The entire variation focuses on maintaining firm control over the d5 square. In this line, black's critical response is knight a5, trying to grab the bishop pair. But white simply ignores it and plays knight g e2. After knight takes c4, d takes c4, white establishes this bind structure, clamping down on d5. It resembles the Marozzi bind in the Sicilian defense, but the existence of pawns on c2 and c7 makes it unique. I named this a cat ear bind. The line continues with d6, knight g3, bishop e6. Here, the normal move is queen d3, which is the best move. However, I found that queen f3 is also playable and much more tricky. First question, should black take on c4? In this position, the engine's best move is actually bishop takes c4. But after knight f5, castle is a mistake because of bishop g5 followed by knight h6 g4. Since the g7 pawn is overloaded, there is no good way to resolve the pin on the f6 knight. The correct defense is king f8, but after bishop g5, black should unpin the knight by h6 g5. White is down a pawn, but the knight on f5 is menacing, as once Kasparov said that it is worth a pawn. I think white has good practical chances. Let's move on to the game. The game followed the variation we just looked at up until h3. Here, my opponent played a6, likely anticipating knight a4, or perhaps preparing for a future b5 expansion. I continued development with knight e2, and after knight a5, knight g3, black didn't rush to take the bishop immediately and played d6, waiting to see how white would commit moves. Here, I played bishop d2, provoking the knight to take the bishop, which was played in the game. To an advanced player, this move might look quite peculiar. As I mentioned before, d3 is usually the ideal square for the queen in these structures, and right now the bishop is blocking that path. This is also a novelty since it's impossible to come up with without knowing the queen f3 idea. Knight takes c4, d takes c4, bishop e6, so queen f3. In this position, bishop takes c4 is much riskier because white is ready to castle queenside and will quickly launch the kingside attack with g4. My opponent, a FIDE master, saw it and found the best move, knight d7. I went for knight f5 anyway, but black's idea was to meet it with rook g8. I played knight d5, but after g6, knight h6 was an inaccuracy. The correct move was knight fe7, which looks shaky, but after rook f8, bishop a5 is a concrete idea. And after bishop b6, bishop takes b6, knight takes b6, queen b3, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, c takes d5, all minor pieces are exchanged and the position is equal. Since that felt a little too forced and dry, I've come up with an alternative idea against knight d7, which I'll share with you at the end of the video. But for now, let's get back to the game. After knight h6, rook f8, g4 was another mistake, although it was not punished. Best move was c6, but this is not as simple as it looks. White can actually ignore it and play long castle. After c takes d5, c takes d5, black does not win a piece because the bishop on e6 is trapped. So black should play f6 instead, but after knight e3, a natural looking move bishop takes e3 with the idea of bishop takes c4 is a huge mistake due to the vulnerable king. Bishop b4, c5, rook takes d6, followed by rook hd1 is crushing for white. The correct move is queen b6 and black has a positional advantage with an active bishop pair. In the game, black took the knight on d5, which led to an equal position. C takes d5, queen e7, h4, stopping potential queen h4 ideas, then both castled queenside with king b8 and king b1 included. Black played rook c8 to prepare c6 break. I played bishop g5 to provoke f6, then dropped back to c1, aiming for breaks on g5 or h5. Black braked c6 as planned, queen e2, c takes d5, rook takes d5, knight b6, rook d3, rook c6. Here I played c3, preparing queen c2 to control the b1 h7 diagonal for the g5 break. Knight d7, queen c2, bishop a7, rook h3, doubled the rook on the h-file, knight c5, then g5 as planned. Queen e6, g takes f6, rook takes f6. Here, I felt that black pieces were not well coordinated, especially back rank is temporarily weak, so I break h5. This move was inaccurate, although it was not a calculation error, but the evaluation was wrong. g5, bishop takes g5, rook takes h6. And I knew that bishop takes h6 would be a mistake because black has two pieces for the rook, but my idea was rook f3, trapping the rook on h6. Black defended the back rank with rook c8, rook f5 to free the f3 square, bishop b6 and f3 with a threat of queen d2. After bishop d8, white ended up with bishop takes h6, but queen takes h6, rook g1. I thought that bishop on d8 was blocking the rook so that I could control the open files. Bishop b6, rook g4. I still thought this was fine for white. But I underestimated my king's safety, weakened by c3 and the absence of the rooks on the back rank. Indeed, after queen e3, queen d1 was a serious mistake. Second question, black to play and win. The best move is knight a4, threatening rook takes c3, knight takes c3 check, or knight takes b2, so it has to be taken. But after queen e1 check, king c2, queen e2 check, king b1, queen f1 check, stopping rook g2, king c2, bishop e3, there is no defense against queen c1. In the game, black overlooked and played knight d3, but this allowed rook g2, and after knight f2, queen f1, white defended. Here, black decided to take a risk and played rook c7 to defend 7th rank, but also invited white rooks on the back rank. White was provoked and played rook f8 check, king a7 and rook g8. Now, the obvious threat is rook a8 checkmate. Therefore, black has to move the bishop to keep the b6 square for the king. But it seems there is no safe square for the bishop. Yet, bishop d4 was played. This bishop can't be taken because of the checkmate threat. So I played rook a8 check, king b6 and rook g2, defending against the threat, which I thought was threatening c takes d4. However, this was a blunder and I resigned in the next move. Final question, black to play and win. And how should white have defended the position instead of rook g2? The final move was queen takes f3. What I overlooked was c takes e4, queen takes e4 check, king a1, queen takes g2, and white cannot take back because of back rank mate. The correct defense was rook ac8, neutralizing a strong c5 rook and creating a threat of c takes e4. So black would play bishop c5, and after rook takes c7, king takes c7, b4, black king would be too exposed, therefore queen takes c3 would be played to give perpetual checks. Unfortunately, I couldn't prove my idea, but I think this was well played game. After the game, I came up with an alternative idea in the position where knight d7 was played. The move I played was knight f5, which is the stockfish best move, but with using lc0, I found that h4 is interesting. The point is preparing h5 to meet g6 if bishop takes c4, knight f5. So black's best move is castle to defend g7 and white goes knight f5. Bishop takes c4 fails due to queen g3, so black's best move is prophylactic king h8. White keeps ignoring c4 pawn and pushes h5. If bishop takes c4, knight d5, preparing knight e7 is strong, and bishop takes d5, e takes d5 compensates for a pawn. Here, black has a strong b5 break with a complicated position after knight d5, b takes c4, knight d e7, or if h6, example line would be knight d5, rook e8, g4, c6, knight e3, and white has some attacking ideas. Hopefully you enjoyed the game and my ideas are inspiring. Thanks for watching and see you next time.